Every August 8th, millions of people online start talking about a portal opening. Almost none of them know the actual star at the center of it, or the civilization that started paying attention to it 4,000 years before anyone called it the Lion's Gate. I want to give you the real, full origin today, the astronomy, the goddess at the heart of it, and the honest parts of this story that most videos skip entirely. I spent real time in the sources for this one, because I think a tradition this old deserves to be understood properly before it gets celebrated online year after year. It deserves a full telling, laid out properly from the beginning. By the end, you'll understand exactly why this specific date carries the weight it does, and why 2026 is drawing so much extra attention from astrologers watching it closely. The star behind all of this is Sirius, the brightest point of light in the night expanse besides our own sun. It sits in the constellation Canis Major, the greater dog, roughly twice the mass of our sun and shining nearly 25 times brighter, close enough to our own solar system that its light has been drifting slowly nearer for thousands of years. That brightness alone is part of why ancient civilizations across the world tracked it so closely, long before anyone had a telescope to explain why it stood out so clearly against everything around it. For most of the year, Sirius sits below the horizon during daylight hours, invisible behind the sun's glare. Then, once a year, it reappears, rising just before dawn for the first time, low on the eastern horizon, visible for only a few minutes before sunrise washes it out completely. This moment has a name in astronomy: the heliacal rising. To the ancient Egyptians, it wasn't a footnote in their calendar. It was the single most important event in their entire year. They called the star Sopdet, and they didn't see her as a distant point of light. They saw her as a goddess, depicted as a woman crowned with a 5-pointed star, closely identified with Isis herself. In certain periods of Egyptian religion, Sopdet's tears were described as the very thing that caused the Nile to rise. Her consort in the heavens was Sa, the personification of the constellation we now call Orion, and their reunion at dawn each year was read as the signal that life was returning to the land after months of drought. Later, civilizations carried this same star forward under different names. The Greeks called her Sothis. Isis herself was recorded describing herself as the one who rises in the dog star, a line that has survived in temple inscriptions for thousands of years. The mythology around this moment runs deeper than a single goddess watching a single star. Sopdet's consort, Sa, was the personification of Orion, the constellation that climbs just ahead of Sirius in the pre-dawn hours, its 3-star belt often the first thing visible to the naked eye. In Egyptian mythology, Orion was closely tied to Osiris, the god of death and rebirth, the one who was killed and dismembered by his brother Set and later restored to life through Isis's devotion. When Sa rises with Sopdet each year, the ancient Egyptians were watching what they understood as a divine reunion play out overhead: Isis and Osiris, death and renewal, meeting again at the exact moment the flood that would resurrect the land was about to begin. That layered symbolism is part of why this window carries so much weight in modern spiritual circles centuries later. It was never simply a star returning. It was a story of loss, devotion, and restoration, written into the pattern of the heavens and repeated every single year without fail. Here's why this mattered so much: it shaped an entire civilization's sense of time itself. Sopdet's return coincided almost exactly with the annual flooding of the Nile. That flood carried fertile silt across the riverbanks, and that silt was the entire foundation of Egyptian agriculture. No flood meant no harvest. No harvest meant no surplus, no stability, and eventually no Egypt as history came to know it. So the Egyptians built their calendar around her. Her reappearance marked the start of their new year, the beginning of the flood season, and the point their entire 365-day civil calendar was calculated from. This wasn't a symbolic ceremony layered on top of an already functioning system, added later for tradition's sake. This star and the flood she announced functioned as the system itself, the clock the entire civilization set its life by. There's a detail here that tends to get left out of most retellings, and I think it deserves a mention because it's genuinely remarkable. The heliacal rising of Sirius only lines up exactly with the solar calendar once every 1,460 years, a cycle historians call the Sothic cycle. For most of Egyptian history, the star's return slowly drifted across their calendar year by year, a quiet astronomical clock ticking steadily in the background of an entire empire, invisible to anyone who wasn't watching the eastern horizon before dawn with real devotion. Priests trained for this single observation across entire careers, generation after generation. Watching for Sopdet's return required standing at the same point on the horizon morning after morning, long before the actual date, waiting for one brief flash of light low over the water. Getting it right meant the difference between a calendar that served the entire kingdom accurately and one that slowly drifted out of alignment with the seasons it was meant to track. That level of devotion, sustained across centuries, is what this single star commanded, thousands of years before anyone attached the word portal to it, and it's worth sitting with for a moment before we move any further. I want to pause here and be direct with you, because this is where most Lionsgate content starts stretching the truth, and I'd rather give you something you can trust. Historians and Egyptologists have documented everything I've described so far with real confidence. Sopdet, the heliacal rising, the Nile flood, the new year, the calendar built around a star. That part is recorded in temple inscriptions, astronomical records, and centuries of archaeological work. It's about as solid as ancient history gets. The historical record has one clear gap. There is no surviving ritual specifically called a Lion's Gate portal, and no ancient Egyptian text describing August 8th as a spiritual gateway in the way modern practitioners describe it today. Some claims circulating online about specific Egyptian ceremonies tied to this exact date, including festivals honoring lion goddesses like Sekhmet, appear in modern retellings without solid historical sourcing to back them up. Those threads still hold devotional and symbolic value on their own terms, separate from the archaeological record. I'm telling you this because I'd rather you understand the layer that's genuinely ancient and the layer that's genuinely modern. The Lion's Gate portal, as it's practiced today, is a real and meaningful contemporary tradition. It draws its power from thousands of years of authentic reverence for Sirius, reshaped and given a new name by modern spiritual communities who recognized something worth honoring in it. Understanding that distinction only makes engaging with the portal more grounded. You're working with something built on real ancient devotion, told to you honestly. So where does the lion in Lion's Gate actually come from? This part is rooted purely in astrology, tied directly to the season the heliacal rising falls in. Every year, Sirius's return happens during the exact weeks the sun is passing through the zodiac sign of Leo. Leo is ruled by the sun itself, and it carries the full archetype of the lion: leadership, courage, radiance, and the willingness to be seen fully, taking up space without apology or hesitation. Sirius has been called the spiritual sun by multiple traditions across history, valued for a light considered wiser and older than our own. And when it rises in near alignment with our actual sun, sitting in the sign of the lion, you get the complete picture behind the modern name. This is a genuine convergence, the brightest star in the night heavens, reappearing during the precise weeks the sun sits in the one sign built entirely around solar power. Modern astrologers describe the resulting window as an energetic gateway, one that amplifies whatever Leo already represents: confidence, creative expression, and the courage to finally step into a role you've been circling for a while. In contemporary spiritual practice, this alignment is also frequently described as activating the third eye and heart chakra together, deepening intuition. At the same time, it opens the heart toward something closer to unguarded self-expression. Whether you engage with that language or simply notice a shift in your own energy this week, the timing behind it is consistent and real. The portal is generally described as opening in late July, peaking on August 8th, and closing around August 12th, which this year lines up closely with the total solar eclipse we'll be covering in a separate video. There's one more layer worth naming, and this one is rooted in numerology. August 8th is already written as 8/8 on most calendars, and in numerology, the number 8 carries strong associations with infinity, balance, and material abundance. Astrologers and numerologists pay close attention every single year this date rolls around, purely because of that symbolism. This year carries something extra. The full date, August 8th, 2026, reduces down numerologically to 8 itself, once every digit is added together. Practitioners across the community are calling 2026 a triple 8 gateway because of it, and it's a genuinely rare alignment, one worth paying close attention to, specifically this year. Numerology treats the number 8 as a symbol of cycles completing and beginning again in the same motion, the same shape an infinity sign traces when you draw it in one continuous line. A single 8 already carries that weight on its own. A date built almost entirely out of 8s, landing during a portal already named for the number, is the kind of stacking astrologers wait years to see. This video is just the beginning of the Lion's Gate series, the real history underneath a tradition that gets repeated online every August without anyone explaining where it actually comes from. Knowing where a tradition comes from changes how you carry it. It stops being a trend you picked up somewhere online and starts being something you can actually stand inside with your eyes open. If this video gave you something worth carrying into August 8th, the single most helpful thing you can do right now is hit the like button and drop a comment below. Even one word helps. This channel is in a season of rebuilding after everything that unfolded earlier in the year, and every like and every comment on this video is quite literally teaching the algorithm to bring the next person here. That work is what keeps this content reaching the people who need to find it. The community I mentioned in earlier videos is being closed, and the deeper work is moving directly here to YouTube through the channel membership. If the work I do here has genuinely supported your path and you want to support it back, joining the membership as a 4D or 5D sponsor is how that happens now. It keeps this whole project alive and gives me the space to keep showing up here with the same depth I brought to this video. 4,000 years ago, someone stood in the dark before dawn and waited for a single point of light to break the horizon. When it came, an entire civilization began its year. That same star still rises on August 8th, and the door it once marked is still open to anyone paying attention.